She bribed the doctor, Maya whispered, standing in the doorway of her father's private study. Her voice trembled, but the words carried like a shot. William Carter, chairman of Carter Tech and one of the most respected names on the eastern seaboard, paused mid-signature. The estate's heavy rain tapped faintly against the windows, but inside, all sound had vanished except for those 5 words. "What did you say?" he asked without turning around. "I saw her, Cynthia. She gave Dr. Halverson an envelope. She told him what to write in your report," Maya said, her eyes locked on her father's back. "She said you're not fit to lead the company anymore." The air shifted. William slowly turned in his leather chair, his silver reading glasses still perched on the bridge of his nose. Behind him, the mahogany shelves lined with plaques and family photos seemed suddenly distant ghosts of a life now under question. Cynthia's voice echoed from down the hall before she even entered the room. "Darling, are you ready to?" She stopped short when she saw Maya, then forced a smile. "Oh, Maya, you're up early." "I couldn't sleep," Maya replied. Her fingers curled tightly around the tablet in her hands. Cynthia's smile tightened. "William, let's not entertain drama this morning, please. Maya's been tense lately." William raised a hand, his eyes still on his daughter. "You said you saw something." Maya swallowed. "I heard her talking to Dr. Halverson in the garage. She didn't know I was in the back seat of her car. She told him to adjust your medical file, something about early cognitive decline. She said it would give her leverage with the board to remove you." Cynthia let out a soft laugh, but her eyes had darkened. "That's absurd. William, please. She said you'd sign whatever she put in front of you once the medication dulled your clarity," Maya added, her voice stronger now. "She's been slipping pills into your morning juice." William's hand trembled slightly as he lowered the pen. Cynthia's facade cracked just a flicker. "Are we really going to take the word of a child over a licensed physician and your own fiancé?" "I'm not a child," Maya said quietly. "I'm your daughter." William stood up, slowly, deliberately. "Do you have proof?" Maya held up her tablet and pressed play. The audio was faint but clear. "We'll say it's early-stage decline. Just enough for concern. The board will need a new voice mine, and if he questions it, increase the dosage." His judgment's already cloudy. Then came the sound of paper sliding an envelope and the unmistakable voice of Dr. Halverson. "You'll have it by Thursday." Cynthia lunged forward. "That's a violation of privacy. You can't." William turned to her, his face pale but resolute. "Pack your things." "What?" "You're leaving this house today." William, don't be ridiculous." He pointed toward the hallway. "Now." Cynthia's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Her eyes flicked to Maya, burning with fury, but Maya didn't flinch. William sat back down, the strength slowly returning to his voice. "Maya, go upstairs. I'll call my lawyer." "I want to stay," she said, "in case you forget what you just heard." That hit him, soft, but deep. "No," he said gently. "I won't forget." Later that morning, Maya stood at the window of her father's office, watching the security team escort Cynthia to her black Lexus. The woman never once looked back. "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" William asked behind her. "You've been distant," Maya said. "She made sure of it." He sighed, aged 10 years in that moment. "You're only 12. You shouldn't have to carry this." "I'm not carrying it alone anymore," she said. A long silence passed between them. Then he said, "The board meets next week. If her version of the file had gone through, they might have voted me out." "She knew what she was doing," Maya replied. "She wasn't just after your name. She wanted everything." He nodded slowly, the weight of betrayal settling on his shoulders. "But she underestimated one thing," he said finally. Maya looked up. "What's that? You?" The corners of her lips lifted not in pride, but in quiet relief. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, her father saw her clearly, not just as his daughter, but as the person who had saved his legacy from being stolen in silence. And in that quiet moment, there was no need for applause, no audience to witness it, just a father, a daughter, and one undeniable truth. That 12-year-old girl had saved an entire empire. Hit like to let Maya know she's not alone. And don't forget to leave a comment telling us where you're watching this from. Who knows? Someone nearby might be quietly watching this story with you right now. The next morning, The Carter estate was unusually quiet. The heavy clouds that loomed above the Hudson River mirrored the heaviness inside the house. Maya stood at the foot of the staircase, clutching the same tablet that had upended everything the day before. Her father's legal team had arrived before sunrise, and she could hear the low hum of urgent voices behind the closed doors of his office. In the dining room, untouched breakfast still steamed. Maya's gaze lingered on the glass of fresh orange juice at her father's place. For a long moment, she simply stared at it. Then she quietly took it to the kitchen sink and poured it out, just in case. William Carter emerged a few minutes later, the deep lines on his face drawn even tighter than before. But this time, he looked sharper, more aware. The fog that had dulled his eyes had lifted, and Maya could tell he hadn't taken any medication that morning. "Dad," she said. He stopped. His gaze softened. "You shouldn't have to think like this. Checking my food, guarding me." Maya shrugged, but her voice was steady. "You taught me to protect what matters." William didn't answer at first. Then he reached for his coat. "Get your jacket. We're going to the hospital." Maya blinked. "Now?" "Now." At St. John's Private Medical Center in Manhattan, the staff welcomed William Carter with the politeness reserved for titans of industry. But behind the nods and handshakes was something else: hesitation, unease. Maya noticed it before her father did. She saw the receptionist's hands tremble slightly when she typed his name into the system. She saw the head nurse glance at another staff member before offering a smile. Something wasn't right. They were taken to Dr. Halverson's private office on the 5th floor, where the man stood waiting, his face a careful mask of surprise. "Mr. Carter," the doctor said, extending a hand. "What a surprise. I wasn't expecting." "I'm not here for pleasantries," William interrupted. "I need to see my file. The original, not the copy you sent to the board." Dr. Halvorson faltered it. "Well, of course, but that's not how the protocol works. William held up his phone, pressed a button, and a voice came through Cynthia's voice. "We'll say it's early stage decline. Just enough for concern. The board will need a new voice mine, and if he questions it, increase the dosage." Halvorson froze. Maya stepped forward, small and fierce. "You were going to let them take everything from him." The doctor's eyes darted to the door. Let's speak in private." We are speaking," William said. "Now open the records." Under pressure, Halvorson logged into the encrypted system. William leaned in, Maya beside him. The report on screen was clean, clinical, and according to the doctor, truthful. But then William opened the backup directory. A second file was there, time-stamped from 3 days ago, before the first was updated. He clicked it, and there it was. Cognitive function, strong. Neurological scan, clear. All within normal limits for a man his age. No signs of deterioration, no concern for decline. The forged version, the one sent to the board, was different in only 2 places, but those places were everything. One line marked, "Early signs of executive dysfunction." Another noted, "Suggested further testing and oversight," both enough to trigger a review of William's fitness to lead. William turned to Halvorson. "How much did she pay you?" "Druging can't. Answer the question." Halvorson looked at Maya, then at William again. Finally, he dropped his gaze. $50,000, and a promise to appoint me as chief medical officer on the new Carter Foundation board once she took control. Maya's voice was like ice. "You were willing to lie about his mind? Just for a title?" Halvorson said nothing. William stood, towering over the man. "You're going to write a new report, the real one, and you're going to submit a formal correction to the board, citing clerical miscommunication. That buys you one chance at not losing your license. Take it." The doctor nodded, pale and sweating. Yes, of course." Outside the office, Maya walked silently next to her father down the long white corridor. "You were right," William said at last. "I didn't want to be," Maya replied. He stopped and looked at her, really looked at her, as if seeing all 12 years of her life compressed into this one moment. "You're your mother's child," he whispered. Maya's heart tightened. Her mother had died when she was just 5 months old. She had grown up with pictures, stories, and traces but no memories. "What would she have done?" Maya asked quietly. William smiled. "She would have called the cops, and then baked them cookies afterward." Maya laughed, a soft, uncertain sound, but real. For a brief second, the tension loosened between them. Back at home, Maya found herself in the study again, looking at her father's desk, the stack of papers waiting for signatures, the board reports, the ledger of shareholder voting rights. She realized how close Cynthia had come. One signature, one missed clue, one more pill, and everything would have vanished. Later that night, as William spoke with the legal team about securing the board's trust, Maya walked out onto the back porch. Rain had returned, but it was soft now, just a whisper on the wooden steps. She sat, hoodie wrapped tight around her, and watched the shadows flicker across the garden. She didn't know what came next, but she knew this: they wouldn't steal her father's legacy. Not while she was watching. The next morning arrived heavy with expectation. Maya was up before the sun, dressed in a simple navy cardigan and gray slacks that her father had helped her pick out. It wasn't about style today, it was about being taken seriously. She looked in the mirror, pulled her curls back into a tight ponytail, and breathed deeply. The girl who had once tiptoed through the halls of her father's world was now walking right into the center of it. Downstairs, William Carter sat at the breakfast table, surrounded by files. His coffee had gone cold. His phone was already ringing. But his eyes softened when he saw her. He stood and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You ready, sweetheart?" Maya nodded. "Are they?" William gave a tight smile. Not even close. By the time they arrived at the Carter Global headquarters in downtown Manhattan, the boardroom was already filling. 12 members of the board sat around the long glass table, murmuring in low voices. The room was modern and intimidating, with towering windows offering a cold view of the city skyline. Cynthia was there too, poised in her tailored white suit, sipping espresso as if nothing had happened. Her expression didn't change when William and Maya entered, but the way her grip tightened on the cup was enough. "Mr. Carter," said one of the board members, Gerald Moss, an old colleague with a clipped voice. "We received your urgent notice. What is the meaning of this emergency session?" William straightened his shoulders. "This is about leadership and truth. I'm here to correct a serious falsehood that has affected your perception of my ability to run this company." Cynthia stood, her tone light and rehearsed. "William, we've already reviewed the medical report. There's no need to put everyone through. The report was falsified," William said flatly. Gasps rippled around the room. A few people exchanged glances. Cynthia blinked but kept her smile frozen in place. "I'd like to introduce the real report," William continued, "and I've brought someone who helped uncover it." All heads turned to Maya. She stepped forward, clutching her tablet tightly. Her heart thundered in her chest, but she raised her chin. "I recorded the conversation between Dr. Halverson and my stepmother. He admitted to being paid to forge my father's diagnosis. I have the audio." Cynthia's voice cut sharp. "That's absurd. She's a child. You're taking the word of a 12-year-old over a licensed physician?" Maya looked directly at her. "You underestimated me. That was your first mistake." William placed the printed report on the table. "This is the real version before it was tampered with. Dr. Halverson has submitted a correction and signed a sworn affidavit. Legal counsel is already preparing a formal complaint." Silence. Gerald Moss leaned forward, brows furrowed. "This is a serious accusation. Do you have proof the alteration was intentional?" Maya tapped her tablet. A clear audio file played. Cynthia's voice, calm and strategic. "The dosage needs to increase. I want the board to start seeing him as unreliable. Once that's in place, I'll step in. You'll get your position, doctor. Everyone wins." The air in the room froze. Cynthia took a step back. "That's taken out of context." William didn't blink. "The context is betrayal." A board member in the corner cleared his throat. "I think we've heard enough." Gerald glanced around. "Let's call a private vote. Effective immediately." Cynthia's mask finally cracked. "You can't do this. I've dedicated years to this company, to William, to this family, to my inheritance," Maya said softly, cutting through the noise. Cynthia stared at her. For the first time, she looked small. The board members filed into a separate conference space for deliberation. The wait felt like hours. Maya sat beside her father, quiet but tense. "Whatever they decide," William said, "you did the right thing." "I just wanted the truth," Maya whispered. "That's all." When the board returned, Gerald addressed the room. We've reviewed the evidence and agreed on 2 actions. 1. William Carter retains full authority as CEO of Carter Global. 2. Effective immediately, Cynthia Carter is relieved of any corporate affiliation and referred to legal counsel for further investigation. There was no applause, no fanfare, just the weight of resolution. Cynthia stood, her eyes sweeping the room with disbelief, then landing on Maya. "You'll regret this." Maya didn't flinch. "No, you will." Security arrived quietly. Cynthia left without another word. The boardroom emptied. One by one, the members offered William their renewed respect, but it was Maya who received the nods of quiet admiration. A few paused to shake her hand. One whispered, "You saved him." Later that evening, father and daughter sat by the fireplace in their home. The city glowed in the distance, soft lights shimmering like distant stars. "You know," William said, "your mother would have called that a Carter-style takedown. Elegant, precise." Maya smiled faintly. "Did I do okay?" He looked at her, really looked at Harrend for a moment. His voice trembled. "You saved more than the company. You brought me back." She rested her head on his shoulder. "You were never gone. They just tried to hide you." And in that quiet, glowing living room, they sat no longer as a man protecting a girl, but as a father and daughter who had learned, finally, to fight together. The next morning brought an unexpected quiet to the Carter estate. For the first time in weeks, the halls weren't filled with Cynthia's brisk heels, her rehearsed laughter, or the faint scent of her perfume lingering like a threat. There was only sunlight spilling through tall windows and the soft creak of floorboards beneath Maya's feet. She wandered up to the attic somewhere she hadn't dared explore since she was little. It wasn't fear that kept her away. It was memory. Her mother had passed when Maya was just 5 months old, but the attic was the last place her father had ever smiled about her, sitting by old trunks, holding yellowing photographs, his voice full of things Maya was too young then to understand. Today, though, Maya climbed those stairs on purpose. The door moaned open, dust hung like fog in the air, and boxes lined the walls in unspoken stories. She knelt beside a trunk marked LRC, her mother's initials. Slowly, carefully, she lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of notebooks, old scarves, Polaroids faded by time, and one small wooden music box. She opened it, and a soft melody played off-key, worn with years, but somehow comforting. Tucked beneath the lining was a thin journal wrapped in blue ribbon. Maya untied it. On the first page was a photo of her mother, smiling in the hospital, holding a swaddled Maya to her chest. Underneath, scrawled in elegant ink, "For my daughter, when she's old enough to ask why truth matters more than anything else." Her breath caught. She flipped through pages filled with letters her mother had written to her before the cancer, during the treatments, and even after the diagnosis turned terminal. Letters never mailed, never read until now. "They may try to replace me. Someone else may stand in my place and call herself family. But trust what you feel, Maya. A lie told with charm is still a lie. And sometimes, the world will try to silence you simply because you know the truth." The weight of her mother's words hit like thunder in her chest. Downstairs, William found her sitting cross-legged on the attic floor, the journal open in her lap. He didn't say anything at first, just watched her, seeing the resemblance not just in her features but in her fire. "I forgot those were up here," he said softly. Maya looked up. She knew Dad. Even back then, she warned me. William sat beside her, eyes misting over the pages. She always had a way of knowing more than she let on. Maya hesitated, then asked what had lingered in her mind since the boardroom. "Why did you trust Cynthia?" He closed his eyes. "Because I didn't want to be alone. Because she made me feel needed again, just long enough to believe it." There was no judgment in Maya's gaze, just quiet understanding. She reached out and took his hand. "I don't think she loved us. I think she loved your name." "She loved control," he said bitterly, and I handed her the keys. "But we took them back," Maya replied. William chuckled dryly. "You took them back. I was just trying not to fall apart." They sat for a while longer, reading through more pages. There were bits of humor, memories of Maya's first steps, drawings of future plans her mother had imagined her growing into a musician, a lawyer, maybe even a writer. She had hoped Maya would ask questions, even when the answers scared her. Later that evening, William made a rare announcement. They were having guests for dinner. Maya blinked. "You're having company? Voluntarily?" "I thought it was time," he said, setting out old family plates. "Some of the board members wanted to check in on us. I figured we'd host instead of hiding." She nodded, secretly proud. The guests arrived just after sunset. Gerald Moss came with his wife, a warm woman with a laugh that filled the house. Two younger board members followed: Amira Patel, a sharp lawyer from Boston, and Thomas Reed, a retired tech veteran who'd always been fond of Maya. They brought casseroles and wine, and soon the dining room was filled with conversation. But what Maya didn't expect was that the conversation wasn't about business at all. "We've been talking," Thomas said, setting down his fork. "There's a mentorship initiative we're starting for underprivileged youth. STEM access, coding, robotics, real-world business. I'd like you to help us shape the curriculum." Maya blinked. "Me? You were the bravest voice in that boardroom. And honestly, the smartest." Amira smiled. "A 12-year-old who exposes a corporate conspiracy. That's more leadership than half the resumes we get." Maya glanced at her dad. He gave her a quiet nod of encouragement. "I'd like that," Maya said slowly. "But only if we include girls like me who don't get picked first." Especially them," Amira said. Later, after the guests had gone and the house returned to quiet, William poured himself a glass of warm milk and stood by the window. Maya curled up on the couch, still holding her mother's journal. "She left it for me," she said. "She left you everything that matters," he replied. "Not stocks or property, just her truth." Maya looked at him. "I want to keep this house, not for the parties, not for the power, but for the stories it holds." "Huh. Then it's yours," William said. "And I'll make sure no one tries to take it from you again." The fire crackled beside them. A new kind of peace had begun to take root in the Carter-Hominot silence, but understanding, not the absence of pain, but the presence of healing. And in that moment, wrapped in the words of a mother she never got to know, Maya understood something deep. She hadn't just saved her father's legacy. She had started her own. 3 days after the dinner with the board, the Carter household returned to a deceptive quiet. But Maya knew better now. Silence wasn't always safety. It was just the space where truths waited to be spoken. And somewhere in that silence, she could still feel the chill Cynthia had left behind. William had begun reclaiming control of Carter Tech, slowly but deliberately. Lawyers were revisiting contracts Cynthia had initiated, checking for discrepancies. But something about it didn't sit right with Maya. She couldn't shake the feeling that the envelope Cynthia had given Dr. Halverson was only the surface of something far deeper. The air still felt too heavy with secrets. That afternoon, Maya returned to the hospital not as a patient's daughter, but as someone on a mission. St. Helena Memorial was quiet during the weekday lull. Nurses moved like clockwork, and the smell of antiseptic clung to every hallway. Maya walked with quiet steps to the pediatric floor, then veered off into the administrative wing. She had memorized the layout from the visits during her father's recovery, and she knew that somewhere in the back corridors was the staff lounge, where doctors often left their personal belongings. She waited until a nurse walked out with a cup of coffee, then slipped in unnoticed. Dr. Halverson's coat hung on the far peg, just as she'd hoped. She checked the inside pockets not for money, not for anything dramatic, but for what adults always seem to overlook: the paper trail. And there it was, a folded appointment log and a set of post-it notes, scrawled with Cynthia's initials. Maya took a photo of them with her phone, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She didn't take the papers, just proof, quiet proof. As she turned to leave, the door opened. It was Earl, the night security guard, gray-bearded, gentle-eyed, and always kind to her when she brought her dad snacks during his overnight stays. "Miss Maya?" he said, surprised. "You okay?" She froze, guilt rushing up her spine. I was just checking something for my dad." He looked at her for a long second, then nodded. "I didn't see you in here. Just be careful. Lot of ghosts in hospitals, but some of them still have jobs." Maya gave a small, grateful smile and slipped out. That night, she showed the photos to William. His face tensed as he examined the initials and appointment dates. "Cynthia was meeting with him even before I collapsed," he murmured. "That wasn't concern. That was coordination." "What else don't we know?" Maya asked. William sighed and stood up, walking to his study. From a hidden drawer in the desk, he pulled out a flash drive. "This came to me the day before I signed the preliminary transfer agreement," he said. "An anonymous tip. I never opened it. I was too tired, too afraid of what I might find." Maya took the flash drive and plugged it into his laptop. The screen flickered, then opened a single folder. Internal board concerns. Inside were audio files, meeting recordings, notes, snippets of conversations between Cynthia and several minor shareholders, talk of pushing William into retirement, mentions of controlling the narrative, managing Maya, and accelerating medical concerns. William's face turned pale. They were planning this, all of it. Maya sat still, her jaw clenched. "They talked about me like I was a footnote." William turned to her, his voice low. "That ends now." The next morning, William called an emergency meeting of the Internal Ethics Committee. It was a quiet affair, no media, no noise, just a room full of stunned legal counsel, an IT specialist to verify the audio, and a chairman who looked like he'd aged 10 years in a week but whose fire had returned. Maya sat outside the glass conference room, watching through the pane. She couldn't hear what was said, but she didn't need to. The body language told her everything. Shock, denial, then shame. The tide was turning. An hour later, William stepped out and handed her the flash drive. "You started this," he said. "You should be the one to finish it." That night, Maya sat at her desk, staring at the email draft. She had written a short statement. Nothing dramatic, just the truth. No anger, no embellishment, just what had happened. How Cynthia had forged trust, manipulated doctors, and conspired with board members to discredit her father. Attached were the audio files, the scanned photos, and one line that Maya had read in her mother's journal, now carved into her heart. "The truth doesn't shout, it stands still until the noise fades." She clicked send. The next morning, it made the front page of 2 local business news outlets. Carter Tech heir exposes coup attempt. Truth from the 12. Year, old who refused to stay silent. Maya didn't go to school that day. She didn't need to. Her lesson had already been learned, and it had been far more real than anything in textbooks. But she did go somewhere. She returned to the rooftop garden of the hospital, where her mother used to sit during her treatments. She sat in the same bench, holding the journal in her lap, the wind rustling its pages. A nurse walked by and smiled gently. "You remind me of your mom." Maya looked up. "Did you know her?" The nurse nodded. "She used to say, 'If they underestimate my daughter, good. That means they won't see her coming.'" Maya smiled, eyes shining. She was right. Because now, Maya wasn't just her father's daughter. She was her mother's voice. And she was just getting started. The media attention didn't come crashing all at once. It crept in first as curious glances, then whispers in company corridors, and finally a few cautious emails from journalists requesting interviews with Maya. William declined all of them on her behalf, but the silence was only temporary. Truth, once released, had a way of echoing louder than any lie. Inside Carter Tech headquarters, the walls seemed to listen. Staff walked more upright now when William entered the building. The board, once divided and distracted, now treaded carefully, unsure which direction the company's loyalty would tilt next. Maya, however, remained quiet. She returned to her rowdiness school in the morning, time with her father in the evenings, and long walks in the estate garden when the air got too thick. But underneath her calm exterior, she knew things weren't done. Cynthia had vanished from the company's offices, but not from their lives, and Maya didn't believe for a second that a woman like her would simply let go. One evening, after dinner, William motioned her into his study again. The fire was lit. A pot of chamomile tea sat steaming beside 2 mugs. "She sent a letter," he said, handing her the envelope. Maya opened it slowly. The handwriting was unmistakable. Cynthia's cursive, elegant but sharp. It was short, a warning masked as a farewell. "I hope you're satisfied," it read, "but know this power has a memory. And this isn't the end. Not for you. Not for him." Maya felt a chill slide down her spine. "She's threatening us." William nodded. "It's not direct enough to press charges, but it's enough for me to tighten security around the house, and around you." Maya shook her head. "We can't just wait for her next move." "I agree," he said, "which is why we're taking a different step." He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a thin manila folder. Inside were pages of transaction records, a brief dossier, and a photo of a man Maya didn't recognize. Mid-40s, salt and pepper hair, piercing eyes. His name's Marcus Dwyer. He used to work in the firm's forensic accounting department, William explained. He left the company when Cynthia was promoted. Said he didn't like how she was reorganizing the numbers. I called him yesterday. He agreed to meet. Maya's eyes lit up. He knows what she did. He suspects. And if there's a trail, he'll find it. 2 days later, they met Marcus in a quiet coffee shop in downtown Boston. He was careful, measured in his words, but not cold. He recognized Maya immediately, giving her a respectful nod before settling into the booth. I read what you released, he said to her. Took guts. More than most men in boardrooms have. Maya didn't flinch. Did she move company money? He sipped his coffee. She moved influence, first money came later. But yes, I believe she created a shadow fund through a fake vendor in Nevada. All payments cleared with internal authorization, thanks to your father's illness and her temporary proxy access. William leaned forward. Can we prove it? Marcus slid a flash drive across the table. There's a pattern. Same invoice template. Same payment amount. Same intervals. But I'll need access to the original server logs. If she scrubbed them, it'll take time. You'll have it, William said without hesitation. That night, Maya sat with the flash drive in her hands. She hadn't opened it yet. She just stared at it, as if willing it to carry the answer to a question she hadn't asked aloud. Why her? Why had Cynthia hated her enough to steal from her father her legacy and then threaten her for exposing it? Was it envy? Fear? Or was it simply that Cynthia had never thought Maya would see the truth? William entered her room quietly, noticing the drive in her hands. You're too young to carry this weight, he said gently. Maya looked up at him. But I'm the one who saw it first. He sat beside her. Your mother, she used to say that justice doesn't always arrive with sirens. Sometimes it walks in quietly, with a child's eyes, with a whisper. Maya leaned into his shoulder. Then we whisper louder. Over the next several days, Marcus began his deep dive into the servers. He worked late nights, sometimes emailing updates at 2 or 3 a.m. Maya checked them every morning before school, her hands shaking with both anticipation and fear. It was on a Thursday morning, 1 week after their meeting, that Marcus sent the subject line. Found it. The email was brief, a routing number, a linked shell corporation, and a list of deposit states, amounts, and 2 names, Cynthia Ellis and Dr. David Halverson. Maya stared at the screen, her breath caught. She hadn't even considered that Halverson would be involved beyond the forged report. But there it was his name. His signature, in fact, authorizing a consultation retainer from the Shell Fund. She forwarded the email to William immediately. That afternoon, their attorney filed preliminary charges of fraud and corporate embezzlement. The board, previously hesitant, now turned like a tide. Cynthia was officially removed from all remaining Carter Tech affiliations. Halverson disappeared from the hospital staff roster the same day. And Maya? She stood beside her father during the announcement, not as a child in the shadow of a scandal but as a young woman who had stood up when no one else dared. Reporters shouted questions. Flashes went off. One journalist even asked her what she wanted to be when she grew up. Maya smiled. The same small smile her mother had worn in the photo on her father's desk. I want to become someone people don't expect, she said, and the crowd went silent, as if recognizing that they had just witnessed the start of something much bigger than a scandal. They had witnessed a girl becoming a voice. 3 days after Cynthia was officially removed from all company ties, Maya received a letter this time, not in an envelope dropped discreetly on her doorstep or sent to the legal office. It was hand-delivered. A woman in a postal uniform came to the estate, clipboard in hand, and said with a strange smile, "Signature required, from a private sender." William signed without thinking, distracted by a morning call with shareholders. But when Maya opened it, she felt the air around her shift like a sudden storm was coming. There, in thick ivory paper with a gold crest, was a letter not from Cynthia but from someone claiming to be her lawyer. Inside was a single line. Your mother's name is not on the death certificate by accident. Maya's hands shook. She read the line again. The phrasing wasn't threatening. It was worse, suggestive, intimate, and filled with hidden landmines. She handed it to her father without a word. He read it twice, his jaw clenching. Whoever sent this, they're fishing. For what? Maya asked. William looked her dead in the eye. For your attention, for doubt, and maybe for something they think we don't know yet. Maya swallowed hard. Is it true? About Mom's death? William hesitated. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because he did. She died from heart complications, he said quietly. I saw the autopsy, held her hand through the last breath. Maya nodded but felt the fracture in her trust widen, not toward her father but toward the system, the memories, the facts that now felt like shifting sand. Later that night, she did what she hadn't done in years, opened the bottom drawer of her mother's cedar chest. Inside were baby clothes, handwritten notes, and hospital documents, including the discharge papers from the day Maya came home at 5 months old. What caught her eye, however, was a Polaroid her mother, smiling wide, holding Maya wrapped in a pink blanket, standing beside an unfamiliar man in a gray suit. The date on the back read, May 4, 2012. 3 weeks before her mother died. The next morning, Maya brought the photo to Marcus. Do you know who this is? He stared at it for a moment before his brows furrowed. That's Everett Winslow. He used to be Cynthia's lawyer. Big shot in D.C., retired a few years back. Or so we thought. Maya blinked. Why would he be standing next to my mom? I have no idea, Marcus replied. But I know someone who might. He made a few calls. Later that day, he handed Maya a name scribbled on a napkin. Dr. Lillian Rosenbaum, Johns Hopkins, retired. She was your mother's attending for her last consult, quiet, by the book. But if something was off back then, she might have noticed. William arranged a private jet that afternoon. The flight to Maryland was smooth, quiet, and tense. They met Dr. Rosenbaum at a modest 2-story home surrounded by overgrown lavender bushes. The woman, white hair pulled into a clip, glasses on a chain, opened the door with a soft gasp. William Carter, she whispered, and this must be Maya. You were just a baby. She led them inside to a living room that smelled of old paper and chamomile. I was surprised when you called, she said, settling in. Surprised but not shocked. William leaned forward. Did you know Cynthia Ellis? She hesitated. She came to the hospital once. But not as Cynthia Ellis. She used a different name. Came in late at night. Demanded access to your wife's medical records. Said she was working with legal counsel. I refused her, of course. But 2 days later, I was taken off the case. Maya's eyes narrowed. You were removed? Transferred. Without warning. I filed a complaint. Never heard back. William inhaled sharply. They buried it. Dr. Rosenbaum nodded slowly. I thought maybe I was just being paranoid. But there was something about her. Cold. Calculating. As if she'd already written the ending. Maya pulled out the photo. Is this the man who came with her? The old doctor leaned in, adjusted her glasses, and nodded. Yes, he did most of the talking. She just stared at your mother, like she was waiting for her to disappear. The words sat in the room like a ghost. That evening, Maya stood alone at her mother's grave. The air was cold, the sky pale. She tried to erase you, she whispered, but I'm still here. As the wind stirred, she pressed a hand against the marble, and I will not let her finish what she started. When they returned to Boston, Maya didn't go to school the next morning. She went straight to Marcus's office with a plan. I want everything from that year 2012. Emails, hospital staff rotations, legal documents, any acquisition made in your mother's name or connected to Everett Winslow. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You're not backing down. No, Maya said simply. I'm leveling up. 2 days later, Marcus found something. A medical directive had been quietly added to her mother's file in late May 2012, signed by a secondary physician whose name didn't match any official hospital record. The directive advised against aggressive life-saving procedures in case of cardiac arrest. The signature? David Halverson. Maya nearly threw the folder across the room. He was already working with Cynthia, she said. Even back then. That night, William sat at the edge of her bed, silent. You didn't know, Maya said. No, he replied, but I should have. They were quiet for a long moment. Then Maya whispered, Justice walks in quietly. Remember? William looked at her, eyes glassy. And this time, it's not walking. It's marching. The storm that Cynthia thought she had avoided? It was coming back with thunder, and Maya would be the lightning. The following Monday, Maya returned to school with a different walk. Not faster, not louder, but deliberate, like someone who had seen behind a curtain and could never unsee it again. But her mind wasn't in the classroom, not in Mr. Raymond's lecture on post-Civil War reconstruction, nor in the whispered gossip that fluttered through the hallways about who wore what at the spring dance. Maya had already stepped into a different world, a colder one, where intentions were sharp and trust was currency. That evening, she sat across from Marcus in his study. The walls of his office had become something of a war room, whiteboards filled with timelines, photos pinned beside sticky notes, strings of red thread connecting names that once had no meaning, now part of a silent war fought in paper and memory. Marcus tapped on a folder. "You asked for anything tied to Everett Winslow. I found something strange." He opened the file. "A sealed legal settlement. June 2012, a month after your mother's death." "What kind of settlement?" Maya leaned forward. "It's coded in language meant to bury it, but it's essentially a non-disclosure agreement between Carter Tech's legal division and a woman listed only as Jane Roe." Maya blinked. "Anonymous?" "Yes, but there's an address, Boston, Westfield Heights." Her heart skipped. "That's where my mother's best friend used to live." They drove out that night. The neighborhood was old money that had faded into middle-class quiet. Brick sidewalks, lampposts with peeling paint. They stopped in front of a modest brownstone with ivy crawling up the porch. The woman who answered the door looked like time had treated her kindly, but with a heavy hand-gray curls pinned back, a cane at her side. "Mrs. Bernard?" Maya asked gently. "You knew my mother, didn't you?" The woman looked startled, then softened. "You look just like her. Come in." Inside, the house smelled of vanilla and history. Maya scanned the mantel photos of a younger Mrs. Bernard with a woman who looked unmistakably like her mother, arm in arm at a lakeside. "She was my sister in everything but blood," the old woman said, pouring tea with trembling hands. "And she knew something was wrong. The week before she passed, she told me she had a feeling someone was watching her, not just legally, personally. Do you know who?" She wouldn't say, but she asked me to keep a box, said if anything happened to her, give it to her daughter. But I never thought I'd see you again. And then a man came, months later. Tall, cold eyes. Said he was from the hospital. He asked if she left anything behind. I lied. Maya's breath caught. The woman got up slowly, walked into a back room, and returned with a wooden box the size of a shoebox, worn at the edges but sealed with a brass clasp. "This is yours." Back in the car, Maya opened the box in silence. Inside was a collection of handwritten letters, receipts, and a small flash drive. But it was the note on top that hit her like a tidal wave. "If you're reading this, I didn't die by accident, Mom." Tears pooled in Maya's eyes, but her hands stayed steady. She plugged the drive into Marcus's laptop. Inside were audio recordings, some fragmented, some crystal clear. One began with heavy breathing, the clink of hospital equipment. "She's not to be revived. Do you understand me? My client expects discretion." It was Cynthia's voice, cold, controlled. The next was a male voice. "Understood, but this will cost extra." Maya closed the laptop slowly. "That's the proof." Marcus nodded. "It's damning, but it has to be handled carefully. If we go public, we need more than audio. We need corroboration. We need motive." Maya looked down at the brass clasp in her hand. She didn't just die, she was silenced. The next morning, William held the box like it weighed 100 pounds. "She always suspected something," he whispered. "But I told her she was overthinking. God help me." "She forgave you already," Maya said, touching his hand. "But now we can't just grieve. We fight." They began assembling their case quietly. Marcus called in a trusted investigator. William reopened boardroom access to internal audit records. Maya reached out to a contact she had met during her volunteer work at the community center, Shanice, a junior journalist working for a Boston watchdog paper. Shanice met Maya at a diner 2 blocks from the Carter Tech building. "You're walking into fire," she warned. "You know that?" Maya nodded. "Then I'll carry water." Shanice flipped through the documents. eyes widening. If we can trace even one hospital record being altered under Cynthia's name, we have a case. Later that week, they got it. A former hospital administrator fired in 2013 agreed to speak off record. He confirmed Cynthia had used a fake consultancy firm to access medical records under the radar. Everyone knew something was off, he said, but no one wanted to cross the woman tied to Carter Tech. That night, Maya sat alone in her room. She replayed the audio clip one more time. The moment Cynthia said, "She's not to be revived," a strange clarity filled her. Cynthia hadn't just tried to steal a company. She'd stolen a mother, a life, a future. Maya took out a pen and her journal. "Justice isn't loud," she wrote, "but it is permanent. It leaves marks, and it remembers." The chapter was closing, but the trial was just beginning. The marble corridors of the Suffolk County Courthouse were colder than Maya expected. She'd walked them before, holding William's hand as a child, visiting boardrooms and fundraisers, but never like this. Now she wasn't a girl in a tailored dress with ribbons in her hair. She was the daughter of a silenced woman, holding in her hands the evidence of betrayal woven into the very fabric of her family. Cynthia sat at the defendant's table with her lawyer stone-faced, as always, dressed in navy, pearls at her throat. She looked like the picture of refinement, but Maya knew better now. Behind the polished facade was a woman who whispered instructions over hospital monitors, who paid for silence with company stock and forged signatures. Across from her, William sat with his cane resting against the table, Marcus by his side. His hands, once steady from decades of leadership, now trembled slightly, but his eyes were clear, alive, ready. The judge, a heavy-set woman in her early 60s with sharp gray eyes, opened the proceedings. This hearing is to review the claim of intentional medical malpractice and fraudulent manipulation of corporate authority as brought forth by Miss Maya Carter. Maya stood, voice calm. "Your Honor, we present Exhibit A, series of audio files retrieved from a personal archive left by my late mother, Elizabeth Carter." The courtroom stirred at the name. Elizabeth had been well loved. Her death, so sudden, so quiet, had left a scar in the community. The audio played. Cynthia's voice, flat and unmistakable, filled the room. "She's not to be revived. Do you understand me? My client expects discretion." Murmurs erupted. Cynthia's lawyer objected, but the judge silenced him with a raised hand. "Continue." Then came the administrator's testimony, read aloud from a sworn affidavit. Confirmation of record tampering, falsified prognosis reports, and a paper trail that led directly to an offshore accounted to a shell company traced back to Cynthia under an alias, Evelyn Caraway. "She planned every step," Maya said. "From the forged medical records to the power of attorney documents she pressured my father to sign while he was heavily medicated. She not only removed my mother from the picture, she tried to remove my father too." William leaned into the microphone. His voice, gravelly but firm, echoed through the chamber. "For years I thought my mind was failing me. But it wasn't age, it was sabotage. And I see clearly now who stood beside me and who stood behind my back with a knife." Cynthia finally spoke. "I cared for this family. I ran that company. You want to call me a villain, but I kept it afloat. William was too weak, his daughter too young." Maya rose slowly. "And my mother? Was she too inconvenient?" Silence blanketed the courtroom. The judge recessed to deliberate. Maya sat next to her father, heart racing but strangely calm. This wasn't about revenge. It never had been. It was about memory, truth, restoring what had been broken without permission. 20 minutes passed before the court resumed. The judge read from her ruling. "In light of the evidence presented, including authenticated audio and financial documents, the court finds sufficient cause to move forward with criminal charges against Cynthia Harris Carter for conspiracy to commit fraud, medical tampering, and unlawful attempt to acquire corporate authority." A gasp rippled through the gallery. Cynthia didn't blink, but the judge wasn't finished. "Furthermore, the court hereby orders the full reinstatement of William Carter as chairman of Carter Tech, and declares the interim leadership structure established by Miss Cynthia Carter null and void." The gavel fell. Final, irrevocable. Outside, reporters clustered like bees. Flashbulbs, microphones, shouts. "Miss Carter, how do you feel? Did you know your mother left that evidence intentionally? Mr. Carter, will you return to public life?" Maya held up a hand. No comments today, just one thing: my mother wasn't paranoid. She was right. Back in the town car, William looked out the window. You remind me of her more each day. Maya smiled. Good. Then we're not done yet. Later that week, Carter Tech held its first all-hands meeting since the ruling. Employees gathered in the atrium, unsure of what to expect. William stepped to the podium, but instead of speaking, he gestured for Maya. She walked forward slowly, taking the mic. I won't pretend this journey hasn't shaken us, but truth has a way of rising, doesn't it? And from now on, this company isn't just about profit. It's about people, about honoring the legacy of those who built it with integrity, not secrets. Applause built, quiet at first, then strong, sustained. In the days that followed, Maya helped establish the Elizabeth Carter Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to investigating medical fraud and advocating for families who were silenced, just like hers. At the opening ceremony, she placed her mother's wooden box in a glass case. Justice isn't always loud, she said, echoing the words from her journal. But it lasts, and it heals. William squeezed her hand. Behind them, a plaque gleamed under the light. It read, "In memory of those whose truth was buried but not forgotten." The past had been a weapon used against them, but now it had become armor.